Welcome back, true believers and spectacular Spidey fans, to another really awesome Spider-Man PS4 related video. Not only is it extremely awesome because of what topic we are going to talk about today, but it's even more awesome that I have one of the main Spidey Squad members with me today talking about this topic. The one and only, the incredible, the amazing SPIDEYSK8RBOY. Say hi, Josh.
Hey, what's up, guys? You know, it's been a while.
It indeed has. It has been a very long while. If you guys remember, Josh and I did do a collaboration all the way back when I was still in college, and we speculated and answered your questions about Spider-Man PS4, Spider-Man Homecoming, the Spider-Man cartoon, all stuff that we did love talking about, and you can go check out that video in the description. But now, we finally have a E3 2017 gameplay demo for Spider-Man PS4. It blew every single one of the Spidey Squad members' minds.
I was dying in the collab, oh my god.
We were all freaking out so much when we saw that footage. If you saw legit MHX's video, I'm going to put in the description. But a big majority of the Spidey Squad was reacting to that footage when we saw it, and we just lost our minds. So now that we have that awesome demo, it allows us as Spidey Squad members and Spider-Man fans to make videos about it, to do more analytic, in-depth analysis videos about all the topics in the demo that we saw. And now mainly, we are going to talk about the villains that could possibly appear within Spider-Man PS4 when the game releases. Specifically, mysterious villains. Villains that a lot of comic fans do know about, but kind of the more, you know, standard Spider-Man fans may or may not know about, because these villains range from really well-known to more obscure to really new. So we're going to get in that order, and mainly what we saw in the demo with Mr. Negative being the main focus of that demo, where we chased after him in the helicopter. We saw him fight Spider-Man. Spider-Man fought all those inner demons. That was a crazy cool demo, and these villains can very well be implemented within the game's story, seeing how Insomniac is taking this totally brand new, original story on Spider-Man. It's a much more grounded Spider-Man, so it's going to be realistic in terms of comic book realism, and also just seeing a character on how Martin Lee / Mr. Negative can be implemented within this game's story. We can see on how these villains could also play a part within the game's story. So first off, we are going to talk about the Rose, also known as Kingpin's son, Richard Fisk. And the funny thing is that we already saw Kingpin within the demo of E3, where we actually saw Spider-Man talking to Kingpin on the phone and saving Kingpin's construction workers on Fisk Tower. So a character like the Rose is very well possible to be inputted into the game, since he's actually Kingpin's son. And mainly to go into a little bit of history about him, is that it says on his Wikia page, on Marvel's Wikia page, his parents, Wilson and Vanessa Fisk, sent Richard away to Switzerland. While there, he attended a school where he studied hard to make his parents proud. At the same time, he developed his body with regular exercise and told his peers about how rich and successful his father, the Kingpin, was. Then, one day, he read a newspaper which said his father was the Kingpin of crime and decided to ride a ski lift into the wilderness, never to be seen again. Once the world had believed that Richard Fisk had perished, he created a secret identity of the Schemer, also known as the Rose. As the Rose, the first thing he wanted to do was to dethrone the Kingpin and take a piece of the action that he controlled. So, what do you think about this, SPIDEYSK8RBOY?
Me personally, I'd be down for it, because I mean, it's something fresh, brand new. It's something we've never really seen before in a Spider-Man game, let alone with a Kingpin story in a Spider-Man game, or in any form of media, for that matter. Honestly, the way how I think that they could best work this in is they don't have to go beat for beat with the actual, you know, origin that he has. You know, he could already be back in, say, like, let's say he did go to Switzerland, and, you know, he went to school, and he came back to New York, and once he was in New York, he found out that his father was doing all this crime stuff and whatever, and he got arrested because Spider-Man took him down. But instead of him wanting to get a piece of the action, let's say he turns more into an actual villain towards Spider-Man. He's more geared on vengeance, and he's like, I'm going to take this son of a bitch down for putting my father in jail. Maybe, who knows, maybe he already knew, maybe he grew up knowing that his father was the Kingpin of crime. Who knows, maybe he did. Because they could go a whole Netflix approach where, just like how Vanessa pretty much knew his son could know. Like, his son grew up around that setting and knew, and maybe that kind of, like, you know, twisted his mind, which in essence, you know, it's easier for him to just say, oh, I'm going to go after him, I'm going to kill this guy. He could build that up throughout the game.
Exactly, because what Insomniac said, for you viewers who have not been on their Twitter page, the head writer of Insomniac has said during his E3 interviews with Brian Intihar, who's the creative director of the game, the head writer of Insomniac has said that all these characters from the comics that we know, like Peter Parker, Aunt May, Mr. Negative, Kingpin, all these characters that we know, they're going to be used in different ways from what we usually know them from the comics. So that also goes with Miles Morales, like what's going to go on there with him and Peter, how is their relationship going to be.
About again, by the way, I'm going to make another
exactly. Everyone go follow and subscribe to Spidey Skater Boy. He's going to definitely do a really awesomely in-depth video about Miles Morales and his involvement in Spider-Man PS4, so go check it out once it's posted. And now, really, with this character of the Rose, seeing his connection with Kingpin being his son, they could do a really cool type of family crime, mafia type Godfather drama aspect if they want to do that. Which that would be crazy cool, because we do not know for sure if Spider-Man PS4 is going to be rated T or M, but we can almost bet it's going to be T, because Insomniac, besides Sunset Overdrive, has always done T-rated games, and it's also Spider-Man, so it's a bit more kid-friendly.
I thought Resistance was M, though.
Resistance was M, but that was like a gritty first-person shooter, whereas this is Spider-Man, so everyone knows what is Spider-Man, what he is, what he stands for, so I think a T-rated game would be more appropriate rather than a full-on M-rated game. To continue, we also have another villain of the Jackal, also known as Miles Warren. So basically, to get a little bit of his background, it says on his Marvel Wikia page, Miles Warren was once a professor of biochemistry at Empire State University. At some point, he studied genetics under the tutelage of the High Evolutionary and even created a man-jackal based on the Evolutionary's new men work. However, the man-jackal escaped and apparently killed Warren's first wife and child, causing him to become extremely unstable. He was expelled from the Evolutionary's headquarters due, in part, to his cloning experiments, which the High Evolutionary reportedly dismissed at stagnating human evolution instead of improving it. Warren was also a charismatic figure among the new men, and the Evolutionary wanted Warren gone to prevent his new men from dreaming beyond their station. So basically, the Jackal is an extremely unhinged Spider-Man villain, and the reason why he is on this list of a possible villain that could be in the game is because he has a new rendition of him in the comics. He has been reinvented within the comics. Basically, what you're seeing on screen right now is a picture of the Jackal as this actual Jackal-like creature, as this green goblin-looking person. But now in the comics, he's been redone into more of a grounded, realistic, mad scientist type of figure, where he has this red suit on and that black type of Anubis mask that you see in like Egyptian tombs.
I prefer the other version, but you know, Marvel said fuck everything, right?
Exactly. Marvel has been rebooting, revamping, redoing all their comics, trying to make it more current for the current new era of readers. So with this new version of Jackal, even though a lot of Spider-Man fans do prefer the older version, the Green Goblin-looking version, I would actually love to see this new version of Jackal within the game, not only because of how he is a human, he looks more realistic, he looks like how a realistic version of the Jackal would look like. His new story in the comics of him being this new villainous person to deal with for Spider-Man, and his new look, and how he has new dangerous ways of taking out Spider-Man within the comics, could be revamped into Insomniac's Spider-Man game, could be very well written and well handled throughout the main narrative of the story. What are your thoughts, Spidey Skater Boy?
I would not mind that one bit. But me, I'm overall on the opposite spectrum if we're talking about Jackal, because, okay, so personally, I think that this game is going to be a relatively, like, it's pretty much going to be, you know, a Spider-Man story. It's going to have its human, like, with his quips and everything, but I think overall this would be a genuinely dark story for what we're typically used to. And I think you could like really go to some really cool and kind of eerie, you know, almost horror-like places if you use the traditional Jackal, you know, appearance and style of his character. I mean, like, just like look at this guy. Like, he looks like freaking. He just looks like something that belongs to like a cheesy, like 80s horror flick. And you could even kind of, you know, I guess, bite off a bit more from the Arkham series, even though they're not doing that. You could just have like a whole man-bat jump scare thing, or you kind of have to, or like, you have to like kind of chase around Jackal around the city, and you have to piece things together while you're chasing him around the city and find out who he is, and you can go that kind of route with him. But, you know, once you actually get to, you know, fight him, it's like, instead of, you know, going the whole man-bat situation, you could have, or it's like in the sewer or something like that, and it's like really dark and dingy, and have this whole like stalking process, kind of what they try to do in Venom in the Spider-Man 3 movie, you know, the final battle, which was executed poorly, strangely enough, even though Sam Raimi did horror movies, but that's a different topic for another day. You could have, you know, be this really very creepy, kind of scary boss battle, and, you know, when he finally pops out, it's, you know, like, holy crap, I was not expecting him to be right there.
Exactly.
And you could just take it to some really scary places, and I'm just a sucker for horror, so I just want that in a Spider-Man game.
Totally agreed. And even though this is a T-rated game, Batman Arkham Knight specifically, even though that was rated M, but mainly going into the other Batman games, mainly with Arkham City, that was T. But then you hear these street thugs, they swear sometimes, they get really violent, they describe doing things to Batman very, very intensely. And even though Insomniac is more of a kid-friendly company with their Ratchet and Clank games, and also with Sunset Overdrive, that's kind of like a more fun version of Jet Set Radio mixed with Tony Hawk, mixed with Saints Row, pretty much. They're very fun, they're lighthearted, they're very, very witty when it comes to their dialogue. But mainly what we saw in the demo, Peter was clearly being serious. We saw serious moments happen in the demo. Clearly what they're saying in their E3 interviews, they're saying these characters will be used in different ways. Hopefully those ways can get into some more darker turns, because me personally, if you guys know me, my favorite animated Spider-Man show is the MTV series, and my favorite Spider-Man game is Web of Shadows, so I love these dark takes on Spider-Man. I love these kind of darker stories with the symbiote apocalypse, and mainly in the MTV show, where they always had really dark episodes in that show, and I love these stories being implemented with a character like Spider-Man. So hopefully, even though this story will most likely be a fun story and a very serious story, hopefully it does take a dark turn eventually.
Yeah. I mean, you just said Tenacious. I was like, that's my favorite Spider-Man show of all time.
Agreed. It's sorry for you Spectacular Spider-Man fans, but SPIDEYSK8RBOY and I, we love the Tenacious. We love Spider-Man new animated series. And our third character right here is the Spot, also known as Johnny On, which is funny because if you guys played Marvel Nemesis Rise of the Imperfects, there was that other character named Johnny Ohm, who was the Electric Man. That game is amazing. I love that game more than Marvel vs. Capcom. I said it. Don't judge me.
Facts.
It is true facts. If you haven't played Marvel Nemesis, and you have played Marvel vs. Capcom, what's wrong with you? Play Marvel Nemesis, that's where it's at. So basically, getting into the Spot, as a scientist, was working for, guess who? The Kingpin, as Dr. On was assigned to reproduce the radiation levels of Cloak to find a way to artificially mimic his powers. Working late one night, he succeeded, creating a solid black circular portal. In doing so, however, the drain on the city's power became so great, a blackout washed over the city, causing the portal to shimmer and destabilize. Fearful of losing a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, On stepped into the shock of the transition, which then caused him to pass out. He awoke floating weightlessly in a dimension which he initially assumed was Cloak's dark dimension. He soon realized, however, that the power storage caused the portal to send him into a different dimension, a place of half darkness and half light. A seemingly infinite number of portals surrounded him in this place. Making swimming motions, he managed to find the original portal that brought him there and slipped back through it into our reality. So, this is crazy cool on so many different levels. First off, if you saw my video Spider-Man PS4 101, Who is Mr. Negative? In that video, I said that the Spot, alongside of Hammerhead, are actually allies of Mr. Negative. Mr. Negative and the Spot and Hammerhead actually collaborate from time to time, like Spidey Skater Boy and I are doing right now, on villainous aspects when they try and do heists and stuff, or they try and take out Spider-Man and stuff. So they are buds. They're straight up friends. And also another thing right there, he was working for Kingpin, and Kingpin is in Spider-Man PS4. So that clearly hints that the Spot could possibly be a character in the game. And also, another really cool thing is his origin from the Spot comes from the Cloak, which, if you don't know, is Cloak from Cloak and Dagger. And who else's origins come from Cloak? Mr. Negative. So they can connect this so incredibly well with all these connections with the Spot, his scientific origins, with Peter being a scientist, with him working for Kingpin, with him making the scientific discovery that relates back to Cloak and Mr. Negative. All their stories can intertwine really, really well with one another, and I think Insomniac's writing team can handle that really well if done in the proper way.
Yeah, I totally agree. Like, honestly, like, if we're talking like obscure villains, he is like one of my favorite, like, obscure Spider-Man villains. Like, I've wanted him in a game for a while now. Like, in the comics, like, I've never read a comic where he was in it. I mean, then again, I don't read a lot of comics now because most of them are like complete shit, but that's a different topic anyway. So I got my introduction to him in the 90s animated series, and the thing is that it's his origin is a bit different. He actually, at first, he's working for Tony Stark, and then, you know, everything, you know, goes the way it does, and then he becomes Spot that way, and he fights Spider-Man, and, you know, then what you know, the more popular story arc from that show is when Green Goblin, you know, develops that portal, that dimension-topping portal device, which he actually used Mr. Negative, Jesus, where he uses Spot's DNA to create, to help create the device so he can make the portals, and that's how I got my introduction to the Spot. And honestly, I really do love that character, and I hope that we get him in this game so that he gets more exposure, and then maybe he can actually become a relatively popular character.
Exactly, because the 90s animated show was a lot of young kids' introduction to Spider-Man who grew up in the 90s. I knew I was one of them, being born in 98, and I saw that show as a kid alongside of Tenas, and then growing up with also seeing Spectacular Spider-Man and all these new shows, but mainly with that 90s show where it did include the Spot in the show, and how his origin was revamped to make it more kind of kid-friendly, I would say. And now, but with his actual comic book origin, relating to Mr. Negative, relating to Kingpin, related to the Cloak, they could implement this so well into the game, and I cannot wait to see exactly how they can handle him and his powers, because his powers is more on the kind of really far-out comic book side of things. So with Mr. Negative, a character who can shoot out negative lightning from his hands and full-on turn into the Negative portrait of himself with the negative face and the white suit and white hair, they're clearly going with a full-on comic book aspect of a storyline with the game as well, in a realistic sense for Spider-Man, so they could obviously do the same stuff with a character like the Spot. Now, on to our fourth character that some of you hardcore Spider-Man fans may know. Spidey Skater Boy and I do know a little bit about him, but we are also going to, throughout this video, educate ourselves on these other unknown characters that may or may not be in the game, but given the route that Insomniac is taking with this game, with the characters that we saw, with the heavy showcasing of Mr. Negative throughout the E3 demo and the trailer, and that PlayStation King ad where we see the live-action / CGI clip of Spider-Man swinging into the Inner Demons, unknown characters / villains will most definitely be a big part of the game, and this fourth character will definitely show that. So this is Crime Master, who, if you don't know, is actually Betty Brant's brother. Bennett Brant. That's a lot of B's, but basically, to get into his backstory, it says Bennett Brant was the brother of Betty Brant, who got into gambling debt with a gangster named Blackie Gaxton, which you may know from the Spectacular Spider-Man show, to pay for his mother's medical bills. With the help of Dr. Octopus, Blackie Gaxton kidnapped both Bennett and Betty as insurance against anyone preventing him leaving the country. Bennett was double-crossed when Gaxton refused to free him of his debts and was fatally shot during a melee between Gaxton's gang, Dr. Octopus, and Spider-Man. Now, as you just read there, it says that he died. Well, it's comics, so he did eventually come back to life, and then that ended up freaking out Betty Brant, and then, actually, funny enough, Bennett has a really cool history with Venom, and also his connection with Betty Brant, and the identity of who the Crime Master is, and Basically, to relate back to the Rose, he's just another crime boss. He's a kind of a gang leader. He runs the underground underbelly world of New York's criminal empire. So he's just another type of realistic gang character that Insomniac could most definitely use within Spider-Man PS4.
I honestly don't know about him because, like you stated, I don't know too much about that character. I mean, if he works, he works. I don't know what the story is, so I don't know how he could exactly fit in terms of like organized crime. Yeah, he could definitely fit in because there's a lot of organized crime elements within this game already as it is. But besides that, I'm just like, hey, look, if you have this guy in there, just put Betty Brant as a love interest on, because he's not gonna go to the debut role, so you're not gonna see her there. And yeah, they said they're gonna have characters in different roles, but come on now, come on, just do that. Come on, man.
Exactly.
And then that way you can kind of go with the comics, and then she freaks out because her brother is doing audition and she kills him just like in the comics.
It's just like another Mr. Negative situation where back in the E3 2016 trailer where we saw the Inner Demons, all the Spidey Squad members and I, we were just speculating that entire time throughout the whole year-long process of waiting for more footage. We were just speculating that those were the Inner Demons. Even we know for a fact that those were the Inner Demons with the masks that they had on, with the suits that they were wearing, with their heavily influenced within the trailer and the King ad. We knew that those were the Inner Demons, but it's still on Insomniac's Twitter page and on their Instagram and Facebook, they never went out and said that, oh, that is Mr. Negative's henchmen, those are the Inner Demons, and that means Mr. Negative's going to be in the game. They never said that at all. It was still obscure, it was still hidden, and then we saw him in the E3 2017 gameplay demo, and he worked awesomely. So a character like the Rose and Crime Master, where they're just kind of more grounded crime boss related characters, that could work out just fine in the game. Like we already saw with Kingpin, they could do the exact same thing here with Crime Master and the Rose. Now moving on to our final introduction of a character that is very recent within the Spider-Man comics, which, as you can hear by SPIDEYSK8RBOY's reaction, is not really looking forward to, and a lot of other Spidey Squad members, specifically Godzilla Mendoza, really are not fans of Dan Slott's work. What he has done in the comics has not really been a fan of us fellow Spidey Squad members. Some of us do like him, but that's kind of few of us. Mainly the majority of us Spidey Squad members, though, including myself, don't really appreciate what Dan Slott is doing with Spider-Man in the comics, and this character is kind of a showcase of that. Some of you may know him as Superior Spider-Man, which was the kind of anti-hero version of Dr. Octopus, but now this is the recent version of him in the comics, which is Superior Octopus, which, as you're seeing on screen right now, this is the new look that Dr. Otto Octavius is wearing, where he is working for Hydra. This is part of the new Secret Empire line of comics from Marvel. Dr. Otto Octavius is still in Peter Parker's body, except now he is on the full side of evil. He's not trying to be a superior Spider-Man anymore. He's trying to be the Superior Octopus. So he's going back to being bad, he's going back to being evil, and he's going back to doing villainous things towards Spider-Man. So basically, to get into his bio, we already know how he turned into Superior Spider-Man. Basically, there was a scene in a comic where Peter was mind-swapped with Dr. Otto Octavius' brain, where Peter's brain was in Otto Octavius' body, and then Dr. Octavius' body was in Peter's brain. So it's this weird comic book thing, and basically that caused Superior Spider-Man to be born. And then after the whole Spider-Verse thing, that caused Superior Spider-Man to go into a cryogenic slumber type thing. So then he woke back up in the future, allowing him to become Superior Octopus. So basically, to go into his bio, it says, Otto hitched a ride to one of his old bases only to learn it had been appropriated by Hydra. Furious over this, and Peter's mismanagement of Parker Industries, Otto easily defeated the intruders, but was approached by Arnim Zola, who offered an alliance in order to take down Parker Industries. Accepting to gain access to Hydra's manpower and resources, Otto constructed new and upgraded tentacles, as well as a new suit patterned after his Superior Spider-Man costume, rebranding himself as the Superior Octopus. And when Hydra rose to power, Superior Octopus actually became a member of Hydra's version of the Avengers. So, it's this weird comic book thing, having Doc Ock still remain in a Peter Parker body, and still continuing his escapade as the Superior Spider-Man, now as the Superior Octopus. But the reason why is he on this list? Why is Superior Octopus on this list? Why is he even considered to be a character featured on this list? It's because the creative director for Spider-Man PS4, Brian Intihar, posted a tweet recently saying that he just finished going over some script mission dialogue with one of the writers from Insomniac Games, and then he said next up on comics to read is actually the comic showing Superior Octopus. So what does this mean? Does it mean that he's just reading the comic book for fun? Because he also did the same thing with the new Spectacular Spider-Man series of comic books. He did the same thing where he showed a picture of it and he's saying he's going to read it. But still, the fact that in this tweet he said that he just finished reading a mission script from one of Insomniac's writers for Spider-Man PS4, and then he immediately showcases a picture of Superior Octopus. I don't know what this means. It could mean nothing, could mean everything. Again, the leaks that are saying that these criminal villains like the Rose and a villain that we're going to mention next could be in the game. That could happen, but a character like Superior Octopus is very new, very obscure to a lot of the recent Spider-Man fans, and not really appreciated by other Spider-Man comic book fans like SPIDEYSK8RBOY and Godzilla Mendoza, where we're not really too much liking what Dan Slott's doing with this character. So if Superior Octopus was in the game, that'd be really interesting to see how they actually implement him in the story. So what are your thoughts, SPIDEYSK8RBOY? What do you think of this?
Please, God, don't let this happen. Please. Please. It's bad enough I'm already starting to have my doubts and have a feeling that Dan Slott might be a part of this game. And if this is in fact true, then oh my God. But a part of me, now that I just think about it, I really think it's actually unlikely, because even though he's writing story missions and whatnot, he's writing like individual missions, probably like side missions and whatnot, like to add in the game. Probably not like the actual story. Because if it's like an actual story thing, there's no way, because they already had the story planned out and written like a couple years back, and they didn't have like the concept for Superior Octopus up until like maybe like 3, maybe 4 months ago at most. And also, even if they were doing Superior Octopus, that's a whole lot of crossover you gotta do, and with so little setup, it just wouldn't work, and that would like bog down the story and would make the game very bad.
Exactly. In this grounded universe.
Now that I think about it like that, it's very unlikely, and I think he's just reading that shit for fun. It is strange.
Right, because Brian Intihar is very passionate about this game. If you see his E3 interviews, he loves talking about Spider-Man and all what they're doing at Insomniac. They also showcase that with Dan Slott, with Mr. Negative, because clearly that's a character that no one really knows about. And even though most people don't like Dan Slott, Mr. Negative is actually a really well-written character, which has come from Dan Slott from the Brand New Day comic storyline of Spider-Man. So even though this is another version of Peter, where he has Doc Ock's brain and he has this Superior Octopus get-up and this alias that he has, like Josh said, that most likely will not happen in the game, but still, Insomniac has known to surprise a lot of people, so we shall see. So, mainly for an honorable mention, Spidey Squad, is that this character has been shown off in a lot of leaks on the Reddit posts and Facebook posts and Twitter posts and all that stuff, and really, SPIDEYSK8RBOY and I do think that a character like this, specifically this character, would fit perfectly well with Spider-Man PS4. Even though his story is a bit dark, I think Insomniac could rework the writing and the narrative of this character to make it more T-rated or just more appropriate for the game. But hopefully they don't change it too much, because I think his story will be working really well with the game. So that is for the Sin Eater. And mainly to get in his bio, it says, the Sin Eater is an occupation in certain cultures, particularly in the United Kingdom, and the Ozrak Mountains in the US. As a part of religious magic, whenever a person died, his or her relatives placed fruit and other foods on the chest of the corpse. The food is supposed to absorb the dead person's sins. The Sin Eater, usually is a beggar, would eat the food and thus cleanse the dead person's soul. This was similar to the scapegoat ceremony of Judaism. The Roman Catholic Church considered it a sin because it provided absolution outside the purview of the priesthood and resulted in immediate excommunication. SHIELD agent Stan Carter was familiar with all of these occupations. Carter was a volunteer for the experimental drug developed by SHIELD, R&D, basing on a very intense pheromone drug that they implemented within his body and aimed to increase strength and stamina. The project was interrupted because it was considered too dangerous. In fact, the drugs were driving guinea pigs crazy. Carter, who considered this an authority-abusive drug, violently resigned. there were no traces of drugs in his system, being totally purified, but nevertheless, the drugs had already driven him crazy, which then, in the comics, made him kill a very important Spider-Man character by the name of Jean DeWolf, even though I should say spoilers, but still that story has been out for a while, and mainly since we have Yuri Watanabe in the game, also known as the Wraith, and we don't know if Jean DeWolf is alive in the game, but mainly if Yuri Watanabe is around, that means Jean DeWolf is most likely dead. So mainly though with the Sin Eater being involved in this game, where he's a lunatic, he's a psycho serial killer, they can implement that really well into this type of story where they have a realistic Spider-Man and a criminal underbelly type of villain roster that they seem to be going so far with Kingpin and Mr. Negative.
The way how I see it, how I would do it, because Yuri Watanabe is pretty much like the answer to Jean DeWolf's death. Like, she's pretty much Jean DeWolf. So, if anything, you know, if they choose to go that whole, like, like they slowly become like really good friends throughout the story, and then, you know, Sin Eater comes in and takes her out, and then, you know, you could just go like that, and then, you know, have a very, very good story. Or even if they want to go deeper and have her be a love interest, which I have a strange feeling that they could potentially do that, or at least in the long run, and they could bring him in and he kills her. Then you could have an even deeper story, and then you can go to many different places with that.
Right, this could go out in several different ways, because we have Yuri Watanabe, who does turn into a vigilante. We don't know if she's going to turn into a vigilante in the game, but mainly with a character like Sin Eater being incorporated into the relationships of both Spider-Man and Peter Parker's life, and seeing how that would connect with him very well within the story of this game. I think if Insomniac's writing team does handle it the way that we are expecting them to, it could be one of the most coolest ways of handling a narrative of a villain that we have seen thus far in a Spider-Man game. So, that is it for this video, Spidey Squad. Thank you so much for watching. Thanks, huge thanks to SPIDEYSK8RBOY partaking in this video with me. I could not have done it without him. And please go follow him on Twitter, subscribe to him on YouTube. He's going to be doing more Spider-Man PS4 videos as the days come by. And make sure that you keep sticking tuned to the other Spidey Squad members' channels and my channel for other Spider-Man PS4 related videos. We are doing crazy tons of stuff that we are going to be doing now with Spider-Man PS4 and in the future in regards to the Spidey Squad, but just know that we have really cool plans for you guys. So thank you so much for watching, everybody. Stay spectacular, Spidey fans. What do you have to say, Josh?
Hope you guys have a good one. Hope you enjoyed this video, and peace out, guys.
Peace out.